So with my videos on the Infinity Gauntlet and Iron Man armors being so well received, and with Deadpool coming out this week, what I want to do here is start a weekly series called Comic Book Concepts, focusing on the origins or histories of certain aspects and artifacts of the comic book universe. In this instance, I want to provide the origin of the Weapon X project in Marvel Comics and incorporate it into how it was that Deadpool found himself swept up in the program. Now before we get into this, something that I want to focus on is the differentiation between Weapon X as an organization and Weapon X as a name. For first-time comic book readers, in truth, the idea of the phrase Weapon X can be a little daunting. And so to clear this up, when Wolverine first appeared in Marvel Comics, while his backstory was largely shrouded in mystery, the only thing anyone really knew was that he was somehow granted his adamantium skeleton by a clandestine organization known only as Weapon X. And so in the face of the fact that Sabretooth wasn't introduced until 3 years later in 1977, and is one of the most well-known participants of the program, during the 3 years between 1974 and 1977, Wolverine and Weapon X went hand in hand, giving way to some fans referring to Wolverine as Weapon X. While the introduction of Deadpool and several miniseries would expand on the history of the project, because Wolverine was so popular and was the quintessential face of Weapon X, the namesake remained a part of his history even into the current day, but also included some other subjects of the program taking on the name as a way to establish their backgrounds and differentiate them from Wolverine himself. Having said that, the Weapon X project was a name given to the 10th iteration of a joint US-Canadian program devised by Weapon Plus. Covered in Grant Morrison's new X-Men issues 145 and 154, Captain America Annual 2000, Weapon X Volume 2 issues 14 through 20 and 23, Marvel Presents Volume 1 issues 72 through 84, as well as Project Marvels 1 and 2, what we're told is that around 3 billion years prior to the development of life on Earth, an organism formed referred to only as Sublime. Gaining sentience shortly after and functioning as a bacterium, Sublime was capable of jumping from human host to human host, keeping itself alive and controlling the wills of humanity as organized civilization began to unfold. Now to sidetrack for a second, the rise of Sublime actually coincided with the arrival of the Celestials and the creation of mutants. If you recall my video on the Celestials, we had talked about how Marvel had created their backstory in different ways, where some writers like Marjorie Liu had established the Celestials as being the creators of life, death, and the multiverse, while other writers like Jack Kirby simply depicted them as wildly powerful aliens that traveled the universe creating life on worlds. The fundamental principle of their existence still remains, and that they had arrived on Earth and planted the X gene in a subsect of humans, which would evolve over the next several million years, eventually giving rise to mutants. As a result, when mutants began to develop at an increasing rate during the 1920s and the 1930s, Sublime viewed them as a threat to its rule, and that the mutant gene protected mutants from Sublime's ability to control them. And so in 1939, during the time leading up to American involvement in World War II, Sublime took over a human host, naming itself John, after which it started a secret war against mutants by creating Weapon Plus, an organization that masqueraded as a program designed to provide powers to humans for use in future wars, but functioning with the true motive of eliminating mutants. While Weapon Plus was used as a hub for various projects, during this time, Dr. Abraham Erskine had been experimenting with creating super soldiers for Nazis in Germany. Because Erskine's work unintentionally fell in line with the goals of Sublime, and because America feared losing the war, under the direction of the US government with Sublime acting in the background, Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos were assigned the task of extracting Erskine from Germany and having him continue his work in the United States under the direction of Sublime and Weapon Plus. To this end, during the events of Captain America Annual 2000, it was revealed that Project Rebirth was launched beginning with Weapon Zero, a man named Clinton McIntyre as the first test subject. While Clinton did not match the moral parameters laid out by Erskine in that Clinton was mentally unstable and had a predisposition towards violence, the failure of Weapon Zero came in that after being provided the super soldier serum, because it enhanced all the physical, mental, and emotional properties of the subject, Clinton essentially lost his mind, attacking the military officials and breaking out of the facility, after which he succumbed to a heart attack and was placed in suspended animation for future revival. Following this, Weapon 1 came in the form of Project Rebirth's second attempt, with Dr. Erskine developing the Vita-Ray machine and exposing Steve Rogers to the super soldier process, leading to him becoming Captain America. However, because Erskine was killed by German spy Heinz Kruger, the super soldier serum and Project Rebirth died with Erskine, leaving John Sublime without the means to recreate the process. At the same time, because Mr. Sinister had been obsessed with mutants during his time as a human in the 1800s, and especially after his transformation at the hands of Apocalypse, during World War II, Sinister viewed Nazi concentration camps as the perfect place for his genetic experiments, during which time he analyzed, categorized, and recorded his work. For those of you who have never seen my video on Mr. Sinister, he was a character that debuted in Marvel Comics in 1987 and was established as being obsessed with the evolution of humanity and the development of the mutant gene. Where his life would change after encountering Apocalypse and being granted immortality, Sinister used his extended lifespan to experiment and gain a greater understanding of the mutant genome, something that would become prevalent in his pursuit of the genetic offspring of Jean Grey and Scott Summers. Having said that, with the surrender of Germany and the liberation of the Auschwitz concentration camp by Allied forces, Sinister abandoned his work, leaving his recordings behind. And so going into the 1950s, in an effort to expand its knowledge on the mutant genome and use mutants as a way to provide normal humans with powers, Sublime recruited a man named Andre Thornton for the purpose of gaining as much information on mutants as possible. During this time, Weapon Plus began the process of attempting to duplicate the work of Erskine in a series of projects designated Weapons 2 through 9. While these saw relative success in that Weapon 2 was composed of animals, and Weapon 7 created Nuke, a human soldier during the Vietnam War who had enhanced strength, speed, and durability due to the armored implants under his skin, the true success of the program didn't come until Weapon X in the early 1960s. In its original form, the first iteration of Weapon X did not involve experimenting on Wolverine. Instead, the organization was wholly funded by the CIA and maintained a Black Ops team called Team X, composed of Wolverine, Sabretooth, Maverick, John Wraith, Silver Fox, and Mastodon. During their time working as agents, the group served the purpose of carrying out covert missions for Weapon Plus involving assassinations, espionage, and retrieving stolen information. At the same time, after each mission, the team's minds were wiped and replaced with false memories, leaving them unable to recall anything about their lives aside from functioning as operatives of Weapon Plus. Where Team X would eventually disband, because the group functioned so effectively and the earlier weapon projects 2 through 9 had failed or been less effective than anticipated, Weapon X eventually expanded into Canada, where it maintained funding from the CIA, but operated under the control of Departments K and H, two covert special branches of the Canadian government, with Department K focusing on spy work, and Department H sanctioning, supporting, and monitoring all superhero activity in Canada. Covered in Weapon X Volume 2, Issue Number 23, where Sinister's experiments were still whispered about by surviving Nazi scientists, the rumors and myths led Andre Thornton to Auschwitz, where he discovered Sinister's journal containing a plethora of information on mutants. Using it as a basis, the Weapon Plus program began to focus heavily on Sinister's work, recruiting scientists like Dr. Abraham Cornelius and Carol Hines. To this end, the minds of Team X were wiped one final time, and they were taken for experimentation. Looking to bond Wolverine with adamantium, at the time, where Weapon Plus would use Wolverine's healing factor to restore the members of Team X who were injured on missions, following the transition to Canada, Dr. Abraham Cornelius and Carol Hines were unaware of the fact that Wolverine had a healing factor, meaning that once the adamantium bonding process started, Logan's body adapted. Considering Wolverine to be the pinnacle of their work and that the adamantium bonding made him more durable than Captain America, and his enhanced senses, healing factor, and claws made him more capable, Weapon X began to program Wolverine for use as a living weapon by planting false memories and sending him through a series of field tests. However, at its conclusion, Wolverine killed several of the staff, allowing him to escape the facility, freeing the other members of Team X in the process. Now, regarding Deadpool's involvement, Marvel has two reasons for why he joined, and they actually contradict one another. In the original comic Deadpool and Death Annual 98, the reason behind why Wade became part of Weapon X was rooted in the fact that he simply wanted to be a hero. But looking at the trailer for the movie, they're actually going with the X-Men's origin story of Deadpool developing cancer and being offered an experimental cure by the Weapon X program. In the X-Men origin story, during Wolverine's time as an agent of Team X working for Weapon Plus, Deadpool was a young soldier who had enlisted in the US military. While Marvel doesn't provide us with a detailed account of his actions during this time, what we are told is that after serving his time in the army, Wade branched out into becoming a mercenary for hire. Using his natural gift for accuracy combined with his training in the military, Wade essentially performed the same tasks as Team X, but instead of working for an organization, Wade worked for whoever would hire him. During this time, Deadpool was also in a relationship with Vanessa Carlyle, the woman who would go on to become the villain Copycat, and after arriving back home from one of his sessions, he had been informed by New York University through a letter that he had stage 4 cancer. Leaving Vanessa behind and learning about Weapon X from a fellow mercenary, this period in Wade's life had actually come following Wolverine's escape. What I mean here is that after Wolverine had broken out of the first facility, the focus of Weapon X became twofold: find a way to recapture Wolverine, and then duplicate his abilities. While capturing Wolverine would prove to be the bane of Weapon X's existence, because the adamantium process had required tissue samples, the organization still had samples of Wolverine's blood and mutant healing factor. To this end, efforts were made to plant the healing factor in other beings who either recruited themselves willingly or else were taken. In the instance of Deadpool, while Weapon X remained ambiguous, they did offer the possibility of curing him of his illness. Where his body did accept Wolverine's healing factor in an amped up form, it also caused massive scars and lesions to appear all over his body due to his cancer. Because the goal was to create superhumans who could act as moles in different governments or organizations, because Deadpool looked so grotesque, he was considered a failure and sent to a facility for failed experiments called the Workshop under the care of Dr. Kilbrew. With that being said, we're going to bring this video to an end, and in tomorrow's video, we'll discuss Ajax, and we'll actually pick up with this cliffhanger and cover Deadpool's time in the Workshop under Dr. Kilbrew. With that being said, I will catch you guys later. Peace.